this election campaign, both sides of politics are promising more jobs and higher wages. Sounds perfect, doesn't it? Well, both leaders have had plenty to say about it, but neither party has uttered a word, in fact, the word that's really needed to deliver those real wage gains, and that is productivity. Look, it's not politically sexy, it's often downright hard to achieve, but it is essential. A man who's battled for 5 years to achieve that high productivity is Peter Harris, the former chairman of the Productivity Commission, now an advisor to Tanarra Capital, John Wiley's investment bank. He joins me now. Peter, many thanks for your time as always. I talk about the 5 years, but it is a battle. It's a grind to try and get these changes through because politically they're so difficult, aren't they?
Oh, that's dead right. And I think we're in an environment now where, Ross, if you can't find a way of making productivity relevant to the average voter, governments themselves are really just not going to make the effort on their own. We were helped, I think, as an economy through the 80s and 90s by the fact that there was a general recognition that things were in a pretty sad shape. We'd had multiple recessions, unemployment was very high, huge interest rates, and we were poor performers on the international stage as well in terms of our exports and our import competition performance. But nowadays, post the mining boom, I think people feel, oh, the economy's travelling reasonably well, why should we challenge ourselves? But you can see, particularly in the poverty of wages growth, in the really poor wages growth we've had over the last 7 or 8 years, it's a deep and clear reflection of the fact that we've had really poor productivity growth. OK, so I want to go to this because we have got to explain this to people, to business and to people who are watching. And that is, if you are to get productivity growth, it's not one thing, it's a variety of things. But often it does take, political change and reform. If you were to improve productivity in Australia, take me to the low-hanging fruit. What would be the simplest ways that Australia could improve its productivity more quickly? Well, I think we can all see the digital transformation going on in industries around us, and yet Australia is still a laggard in terms of adoption of, say, just by businesses being online. Our adoption rates are poorer than many of our developed country comparators, our peers overseas. So support for particularly small and medium-sized enterprises going online, I think, has got significant productivity benefits as well as consumer benefits. I mean, it's a convenient kind of way that people are more used to now than they probably were before the COVID pandemic experience. They're more used to going online. Our businesses need, I think, to be encouraged to do that. And there are mechanisms by which you could manage that. So I see that as low-hanging fruit in the sense that it's going to be in a business's interest, in a consumer's interest, and it'll definitely lift productivity. We can see that from work from home as well. If we can get rid of the morning commute and the afternoon commute, we've got all this additional time which can be used either for, enjoying ourselves a bit better at home or for that additional work overflow that you might need to keep the firm's productivity performance up. So the general positive effect of enthusiastic government support for digital adoption, I think, is a classic for low-hanging fruit.
OK, so that's the low-hanging fruit. What about some of the things that would deliver significant productivity improvements? But they might be harder, of course. So that's perhaps industrial relations reform, tax reform, the types of things that government talk about but generally don't deliver on.
Oh, it's certainly true about those two, but there are other areas where the government can probably, with greater comfort, act. I like education, and when I say I like education, we should all like education. But we have an education system that's really a one shot in the locker. I mean, you transit through early childcare into primary school, high school, through some kind of post-secondary school qualification, we hope, and then that's it, right? You've had access to the system. You're 22 or 23 years old, maybe. You've probably got some student debt, and you've had one go at things. Now, we know in the education system, education experts know, and international practice shows us that a lot of people make bad decisions, and particularly when economies are transforming, they make bad decisions, they end up in the wrong job. There's no way back. We don't actually have a system that supports that. So one of the things the Productivity Commission in my time was looking at was this whole question of what we call the non-market economy and greater efficiencies that should be available in that. And one of the great efficiencies would be, instead of wasting workers who may well have got the wrong qual, so they move into a lower paid job and that's it for the next 40 years for the economy, we really need a chance for them to get back get back into the training system. And things like micro qualifications, adapting the TAFE system, the traineeship system, to enable people to go back and apply some of their work experience but gain a certificate qualification or a higher level than that, or indeed to re-access university if it's to improve themselves from having one particular kind of degree to a better and more relevant degree. We really need to consider something beyond the one shot in the locker education system.
And how do you overcome the problem that many people talk about governments trying to pick winners in terms of where either they're targeting those jobs, or indeed even targeting some of the support that they try and put towards industry? Because this seems to be, again, another area where either government money can be wasted, or indeed, if they get it right, it actually can genuinely help Australia's productivity and growth in the long term.
Well, I think in the education system, we do know something about where we need future workers, without a doubt. We can forecast areas where we need future workers. We can all see the demographic shifts that are coming in aged care and in healthcare and in disability care. Those are massive employment requirements for the future. Now, we can either satisfy them ultimately by importing workers from overseas, as well as training as many as we can domestically, but the numbers are beyond the capacity of this the size of our economy to keep growing, or we can induce more people to go into those areas and get qualifications by this kind of retrain yourself, these micro qualifications that lead to a different level of a certificate service.
Peter Harris is the former chairman of the Productivity Commission, now an advisor to Tanarra Capital. And Peter, many thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ross.